Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. Week 3 in the National Football League begins tonight with the Buffalo Bills. And sorry, I have the Colorado Buffaloes on my mind. Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins could get a bit ugly tonight. We'll see. Our coverage from Westwood 1 begins at 5:30. In the meantime, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text them into the show. 16-year NFL veteran, played 5 of those 16 years with the then San Diego Chargers. Lorenzo Neal will be my guest in the next segment to break down Sunday's important divisional matchup between the Broncos and the Chargers. And I will start with the Denver Broncos today. And there is a theme, I think, emerging a little bit here. That's what we look out for early on in the season. Is there a theme? Is there a pattern? Through 2 games, it seems to be a theme that Bo Nix gets quite upset, or appears to get quite upset about something that is happening. Obviously, in the Titans game, you had him getting upset with one of his receivers for not being in the spot that he should have been. You had him getting into it with Jeffrey Simmons of the Tennessee Titans. And this past Sunday, you had a sequence where it appeared that Bo Nix was getting very heated in talking to Sean Payton after missing a throw to Evan Ingram in the second half of the Broncos' loss to the Colts. And as you might expect, both gentlemen were asked about that. Let's first let's hear from Sean Payton first on what that discussion was all about.
I think it was more about excitement, and it was, but I saw it, and so it was following, I think, a series where we ran it pretty well, and I don't recall it ever being. I would know if there was ever one of those moments, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it was what it appeared.
Okay. Now here's Bo Nix on that interaction with his head coach.
Well, I think for whatever reason, we're allowing conversations to become bigger than what they are. We oftentimes forget that it's a big stadium and a lot of people are talking at the same time. So you got to be a little bit louder and more vocal. So that was just something as simple as he asked me what happened on a play. I told him. I turned. He couldn't quite hear. Turned back and told him again. There was no issue. So, it's just a quick conversation with the head coach. Nothing pressing.
Doesn't seem like the recollection from both of them was quite the same, which is a little bit of a red flag. I think that Bo Nix is doing a little gaslighting here, because you watched that just like I did. That was not somebody with the body language of I'm trying to shout over very loud fans in a crowded stadium. I don't believe Bo Nix's explanation one bit. I think it was about perhaps the missed play that led to the Denver Broncos having to come off the field on 4th down. As that game, that was, I got to imagine, quite frustrating in its totality. Now, if you just take that one interaction, you could say, well, obviously Bo Nix is frustrated that they had to come off the field. Maybe there was something miss there. Maybe he's mad at himself. Maybe he was mad at Evan Ingram. whatever the case may be. There was probably some frustration already built up. Sean Payton was asking him about a play. That part of what Bo Nix is saying, I believe that Sean Payton was probably asking him what happened, and Bo Nix, with already some level of frustration built up, let that frustration kind of bubble over. If you just take that one thing in a vacuum, I think you could minimize it. You could explain it away a little bit. I don't buy Bo Nix's explanation, but I could understand that a guy's a little bit frustrated in a game that I'm sure the Broncos thought that they would be able to win, maybe even going away, and it wasn't going their way. That play perhaps didn't go the way it was supposed to. I can understand a level of frustration, and maybe Sean Payton didn't hear him, and he had to yell, but clearly there is emotion behind the histrionics, again, from Bo Nix. The facial gestures, that was not just somebody trying to be heard by his head coach. That was somebody being visibly frustrated with what had transpired either on that play or maybe the entirety of the game. But in a vacuum, all right, whatever. It's one thing. 2 weeks in a row now. And then you go back to the interaction, quote unquote, that Bo Nix and Sean Payton had on the sideline against the Raiders. I don't have a problem with the dynamic between, I'm not going to go so far as to say, you know, Payton and Nix, the relationship is frayed. They're not seeing eye to eye. I can look at it and say that that is kind of their relationship. You know, Bo Nix is the son of a coach. And there are two things that I think you automatically say about somebody who is the son of a coach, in my experience. One is that they're very smart, right? They think the game at a coach's level. That is a good thing. One thing I've also encountered with a lot of sons of coaches that are coached by their dads is the boundary that might exist if it were any other player is not there. I'll give you a great example and maybe embarrass my brother in the process. So I was never, maybe for like a season of summer ball, was coached by my dad. I wasn't coached by him a lot. He didn't really coach my younger brother. My youngest brother, he coached him a lot. And the two of them would fight like siblings. They would. And I think it was part because when your emotions are running high and your coach says something to you, it's not your coach, it's your dad in that moment. Right? And you could still say, well, yelling at your dad's probably not the best thing. But I think it's a different dynamic. And I don't know if it's more acceptable, but it happens. I've seen it. One of my best friends, his dad was our high school coach, and they used to get into it. And it was something that I or any other player on the team would never do. And it wasn't a sore spot for the team at all. But it was just like he talks to him like he's his dad, not like he's his coach. I would never do that. Maybe I would have if my dad would have coached me more. But I remember my brother and my dad getting into it all the time. I think there's that kind of paternal relationship that is between Sean Payton and Bo Nix, and their personalities invite that a little bit. Sean Payton's not one to shy away from confrontation. I think if you just look at it like that and look at that one instance, or even include the discussion they had during the Raiders game, you could say, you know what, those are two guys that don't seem to shy away from confrontation. There is a close bond. You could actually spin it as a positive, right? It's not, and also they're both grown men. So like some of this stuff you don't take and make out to be too big of a deal, right? The interactions between Nix and Payton. It's not a great look, I'll admit that, but I don't think that Sean Payton was offended or got overly upset. Didn't sure look like he got overly upset about the way that Bo Nix was talking to him. But with Bo Nix, you have to expand it out a little bit based on what happened last week, when I thought that Bo Nix very publicly and in front of their opponent showcased some body language and some things that would be construed as being rattled. And that is a position where you don't usually want to show that. Whether he was rattled or not, you don't know for sure, but you can certainly say the way that the Tennessee game went, that look at Bo Nix's play. You don't think he was rattled a little bit? So back-to-back weeks now, we have a visibly frustrated Bo Nix that at crucial times in the game cannot seem to mask his emotion. And I'm not telling the guy to be fake. I'm just saying when you're in two close games like the Broncos have been, when they are both frustrating in their own ways because of what the perception was of how the Broncos would fare in these two games and also the way they played out, I think there's a time that maybe you tone it down just a little bit, because it gives off, when you add all of these things together, it gives off the impression that any struggle Bo Nix has had this year is getting to him and perhaps begetting more poor play. Right? Certainly in the Tennessee game, you could say that. There have been fiery leaders, fiery quarterbacks in the past. Right? I'm about to talk to a guy who played with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was that way. Peyton Manning was that way. Brett Favre could be that way. But I think ultimately the perception becomes the reality, right? So if you're Peyton Manning and you're getting into it with Jeff Saturday, or you're yelling at one of your receivers when you're with the Denver Broncos, and in that game you still end up winning or you still perform well, then you're the fiery competitor, right? When Bo Nix is doing it, because the success isn't following, you have to wonder. And that's not being unfair. I think with success, personally and team-wise, it gives you more of a license to be fiery, to maybe call out teammates, maybe even borderline show them up like he did Lucas Kroll in week 1, or jawing with an opponent, or, getting into it with your head coach a little bit. Bo Nix hasn't earned that reputation. He hasn't had the level of success that you look at this kind of stuff and you say, oh, he's just a fiery competitor. And I think this is part of the growth and maturation process of a young quarterback. You may be upset and you may be in the right. But if you yourself haven't had a great day, or you yourself haven't had years upon years of production and success to speak from a place of authority, then it just comes off like you are a young quarterback that is letting your emotions get the best of you. I know that's who Bo Nix is, a fiery competitor at his core. But there are times to bring that out. There are times to not. And the time to bring that out is when you are a quarterback far more accomplished than Bo Nix. Showing up your receiver when you have had arguably the worst Sunday of any quarterback in week one, it's not a good look. Getting into it with an opponent that by the numbers and the way the game has gone has gotten the better of you, that's not a good look. And being far more animated and irritated than your head coach is in that exchange is a bad look. And this can all be chalked up as part of the maturation process for Bo Nix. But right now, he is on the wrong side of that line that separates a fiery competitor from somebody who loses his cool. And I think that you have to take all of this as a pattern of behavior. That interaction with Sean Payton was not a one-off. It was on the heels of all the stuff he did against Tennessee. It was on the heels of him and Sean Payton seeming to get into it against the Raiders. You love having a fiery competitor, but when you don't have the track record, like some of these, like a Peyton Manning, it looks and comes off like you are somebody who lets your emotions get the better of you. And at that position, you can't have that. At this stage in his career, he would be better trying to emulate Joe Montana in his disposition than a Manning, a Favre, or a Rivers. I'll take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, how would Lorenzo Neal, if he were coordinating the Chargers defense, attack Bo Nix, and vice versa from the offensive side? What weaknesses does he see in the Broncos defense? The 16-year NFL vet joins me next. The Air Force Falcons this Saturday hosting Boise State. This will be a big one. Kickoff at 5. If you would like to go, I have a 4-pack of tickets for you if you are the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. Efforting Lorenzo Neal right now. We'll get him aboard here in just a little bit, and we'll get into Broncos Chargers. Let's talk about dovetailing off of what I started the show with, which was, Bo Nix and Sean Payton, the latest perhaps dust up between the two. That by itself, maybe not a huge deal. But that coupled with him getting into it with Jeffrey Simmons, him showing up Lucas Kroll, him getting into it with Sean Payton last year, it's starting to become a pattern, and I don't think it is a good look from a young quarterback, especially, one that you could make the case because of the way he played to close out those games, especially the last 2 weeks, that maybe he lets it affect his play. It would be a different conversation, not to be too results oriented, but it matters, right? If Bo Nix and Sean Payton have that dust up and Bo Nix throws the game sealing touchdown, then it's going to be looked at in a different way than perhaps the last play from Bo Nix, or one of the last plays from Bo Nix, I should say, is him throwing an interception. Because part of Bo Nix's resume right now, and it's early, like I'm not saying he has to be this way, but he kind of has to be this way if he's going to, be very outgoing, shall we say, with his emotions. This is a guy that hasn't won many one-score games. This isn't a guy that has shown that clutch gene yet. More of his games have ended with interceptions than game-winning touchdowns. And that's part of his game that you as a Broncos fan hope will come along. Bo Nix was asked about the difficulty in closing out NFL games.
I'd say the biggest challenge is the opposing team's a good football team. They also know that it's a critical possession and they can't get the game closed on them. So, you got to give credit to the Colts. They battled and kept it close enough to where they could, keep chipping away. And, what's frustrating is we never had that one drive to where we had to. We had several that we could have gone down and put the game away.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sometimes it doesn't have to come down to, a 2-minute drill leading your team down the field, Joe Montana, Peyton Manning style. Sometimes it's a drive like the one in the third quarter that he ends up going over and getting into it with Sean Payton that could have made all the difference. So it's not the fault of Bo Nix that he hasn't had the ball in his hands, with the game on the line with 2 minutes to go every single game. Those opportunities will come up more and more as he goes through, and we'll evaluate whether he's getting better in those situations. But right now, the bigger story and what has happened more often than Bo Nix with the ball in his hands, 2 minutes to go in the game, driving down the field for a game-winning score, are these missed opportunities earlier in the game that might have taken the game wouldn't have the necessity to have one of those last-minute heroic drives. Broncos are now, under Bo Nix, 2-7 in one-score games. And on Sunday, you have a divisional matchup And those in the NFL, most games are one-score games. Divisional games are even usually tighter. What's tighter than a one-score game? What I mean by that is more closely contested, more back and forth. These teams know each other better than any other opponent that they face. So this could be another one of those very close games, and it may not be Bo Nix with the ball in his hands with 2 minutes to go to lead the Broncos down the field on a game-winning drive. It could be a quarter before, or it could be a drive before, where Bo Nix is needed to come through for the Denver Broncos, and we'll see if he does. Because Sunday is also one of these that I think you characterize as, the Broncos not having the better quarterback in the matchup. And that was also an issue for Bo Nix last year. Right? When he would go up against Herbert, when he'd go up against Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, Broncos wouldn't win those games. Bo Nix wouldn't be the better quarterback in the matchup. Here's his first opportunity this year to go throw for throw with Justin Herbert. And we'll see if he's up to the task on Sunday. 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. Sunday, the Broncos try for their first division win of the year, while the Chargers already looking to make it a clean sweep their first trip around the division. Joining me now to discuss Sunday's tilt in Inglewood is someone who spent 5 of his 16 seasons in the NFL with the Chargers. He is a 4-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, and a member of the NFL's All-Decade team for the 2000s. Now he is the host of Believe in Chargers, among many things. He is a busy man, and I appreciate the time Lorenzo Neal is giving me today. Lorenzo, glad to have you.
Hey, glad to be on with you. Thank you so much for taking a couple times and talk that little X's and O's, talk a little ball, man. It's going to be an awesome game this Sunday. I know if people want to see it, we know who Denver is, and we know Sean Payton, the coach he is, and everyone knows who Harbaugh is and the coach he is. You have two great coaches. You think about just the AFC West. I mean, think about who's the coach. Pete Carroll won a Super Bowl. Think about Kansas City Chiefs won a Super Bowl. You know, how about Harbaugh? His career doesn't have the Super Bowl that all these coaches that he's going against in the AFC West they do.
Mm-hmm. And a stat I saw this week that Sean Payton, I think, is 1-4 against Jim Harbaugh in their career. So there's not a ton of history between the two, but it has gone the way of Jim Harbaugh so far. And of course, the two games last year, the Chargers swept. Let me ask you about this year's version of the Chargers. What has stuck out to you? What has impressed you most through two games?
Well, I think they're just playing complimentary football. I'll tell you right now, everyone's talking about Justin Herbert, which I think he's taken a huge step. I think Justin Herbert's a top 5, top 10 quarterback. You know that. He's got a big arm. He's pretty amazing. But I'll tell you right now, who wouldn't be undefeated if your team can hold teams under 20? Mm-hmm. What team in the NFL would not be undefeated with what the Chargers are doing? I think defensively has been unbelievable. And what do I mean by complimentary football? That means that you have the offense, when they need to have sustainable drives and score, they do it. They move the ball, get good field position. The special teams play a huge part as well. So I think this team, they don't make a lot of mistakes. They're not penalized. Herbert's protecting the ball, even on the 3 and outs. They're protecting the ball. The defense is playing give but don't break. I just think right now this team is playing really good, really good complimentary play.
How does not having Khalil Mack hurt that or affect that? I don't want to lead you to say it's going to hurt them, but how does it affect what the Chargers have done not having Khalil Mack?
Oh, I mean, come on. One is the leadership. Two is the plays that this guy still can make. You watch this guy, he can set the edge. He knows how to rush. Those little nuances of the game, he brings it calm to the defense. He's that guy that says, okay, guys, we got this. And he makes guys play better. And he makes guys around him better. So I don't think you replace the Khalil Mack. But what you do is you get other guys to step up and just do their job. You seen him go out last week, and you saw the way the defense responded. Yes, did they miss something in Khalil Mack? Absolutely. But Derwin James, you got other guys that can step up. Derwin, to me, is one of the best, if not the best, safety in the league. He can play in the box. He can play linebacker. He can play safety. You can guard in the slot. So Derwin James is that versatility guy that can do a lot. So yes, you don't make up for Khalil Mack, but what you do is you just get more efficient and have other guys do their job. And you just say, look, we're not going to replace him, but guys just have to step up and just play technique sound football. And that's what they've been doing today.
Lorenzo Neal, my guest. So without Khalil Mack, how do the Chargers go at this Broncos offense? Like what you've seen from them, where can the Chargers defense get over on the Broncos offense, I suppose, is the way I would put it.
Well, I think that you look at Broncos and you think about the quarterbacks and, watching him in the second year and you watch Nix, the way that this guy has failed. Last week they were in the shootout. And Indianapolis coach, you saw a quarterback that everyone left him for dead, and he leads the Giants. And you see the way that Daniel Jones is playing. He's playing at a very, very high level. And, and they lost that game. That game should have been won by Denver. They let them come back at the end. So Denver's in a tough situation that that they're going to play harder. They're upset. The coach there. We talked about their head coach. He is going to hold guys accountable this week. And I wouldn't want to be playing against the Denver Broncos this week because I know Sean Payton is going to make it tough on them at practice. They're going to be miserable. They don't want to be there. So this is going to be a big game. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a physical game. And that's what the Chargers got to do. They got to match Denver Broncos physical type of ball. and play physical. And on defense, they got to bend, but they can't break. They can't give up the big plays, and that's what they've been doing well. You watched the Raiders 2 weeks ago when they traveled to, to New England. They had 8 shot plays and shot plays and plays at 20 yards or more, explosive plays. Against the Chargers, they had 0. That last drive where they had a chance to break it into a one-score game, you saw the way the Chargers, they kept the ball for 11 minutes, 15-play drive, and only got 3 points. That's the kind of ball the Chargers have to play against Denver. They got to keep them out of the end zone, keep in the red zone. You got to just roll your neck and play stout defense. And offensively, hey, Herbert's playing well. The way that he's spreading the ball around, he has 2 great receivers. What Keenan's done by being his reinsurgent on the Chargers, he's the safety blanket. And then what McConkey can do as a receiver, how he's able to spread the field and get people open. He's really quick in and out of his breaks. McConkey is a playmaker, and now you see the way that now you got the deep ball because you got receivers going down deep. And I love the biggest, I think, overhaul for the Chargers too is the 2-headed monster, the running back. You've got 2 of the running backs last year, the first and second string running back last year, are no longer on the roster. That's what the Chargers went out and they said, we have to be more efficient running the ball. And I think you'll see the Chargers try to impose their will on Denver running the ball on Sunday.
How have the Chargers been able to account for the loss of Rashawn Slater? Because I don't mean this to slight Slater because we know what he is, and he's one of the best tackles in the NFL. But, the first 2 games, albeit 2 games, this Chargers offensive line looks just as good as I remember it, even without him. What have they been able to do to make sure that Herbert is protected? And to your point you just made about the effectiveness of the running game.
Well, I think the running game is going to continue to thrive and get better. This is early. Marion Hampton is just a rookie, so I think this guy, he and Najee, they're going to get better. Najee, you got to realize it's probably like only 5th practice because of this eye injury that he had on the 4th of July. So you're talking about a Najee Harris that's not even in football-ready game shape yet, and he's going to continue to get better, and that's going to push Mario Hampton to get better. But, hey, I'll tell you right now, Joe Alt, have you seen that guy? Joe Alt used to play left tackle, and he was a premier left tackle. When we talk about Washington State, why you get Joe Alt? Joe Alt has shown the reason why you wasted. That's the reason why you drafted him 4th overall and everything. Why would you get a lineman? Because they took Joe Alt from right tackle and they moved him over to left tackle, and they had to miss the beat. If they had Slater, but Joe Alt is a top 10 tackle. Slater might be top 2 or 3, but I'm telling you, watch Joe Alt this week. Watch the game closely. You'll come back on the show Monday and say, wow, Joe Alt is a dominant tackle. He's got good feet. He can run block. He's a mauler. He's got long hands. He's able to stone guys. Joe Alt is a problem. And what they do, and how do you replace the Slater? You can't, but they have Fisk. And they have other guys. They can go 12 personnel where you go 2 tight ends. Look how big Fisk is. And so they do a lot of different multiple sets to say, let's hide our weakness on the left side or the right side, and we can go 12 personnel and stretch people out and make them cover every blade of grass, and we can get them to the perimeter as well.
You played with Drew Brees at about the same time in his career as Bo Nix is in his. You didn't play with Drew Brees once he linked up with Sean Payton, but you had Drew Brees on your team. Do you see Drew Brees' qualities in Bo Nix? Do you see why so many people have made the comparison, or is it just another quarterback that Sean Payton is picking, so naturally we look at Drew?
I think naturally you just look at Drew. I think and Drew Brees is a hell of an athlete. People think that he's not. He could, slam the ball 6'1", 6'1", 6'2". Drew Brees is very athletic, but Bo Nix is faster. He's a little bit more bigger, a little bigger in stature. He's a little bit more faster, a little bit more athlete, a little bit more wiggle, runs a little more angrier. So I don't know if you can compare him to Drew Brees, because Drew Brees was a technician. He would just, cut you in 1,000, death by 1,000 nicks, 1,000 cuts. Drew would just carve you up. Then he'd go over the top and throw the long ball. But Drew, I think, I understand Drew was in the second, third year when I played with him, but fourth year. But I think that the guy was a student of the game. I don't see enough from Bo Nix to make that type of comparison because Drew Brees, he's the first ballot Hall of Fame, and the guy he was a legend, and it's just amazing what he didn't have athletically. He'll beat you with his mind. He'll beat you with his mental, and that's great comparison, and that's very high praise of Bo Nix for people to say compare Bo Nix to Drew Brees.
You also played with Phillip Rivers, and before you joined me, I was talking about, I don't know if you saw it during the Indy game, but Bo Nix appeared to get quite animated in a conversation with Sean Payton. Last week against the Titans, there were a couple of times where Bo Nix was visibly frustrated, was, doing some talking and a lot of pointing. Phillip Rivers was a fiery personality. Where is that line between, hey, we love this guy because he's a fiery competitor, and, well, maybe he looks a little rattled or letting the circumstances of the game get to him? Like, where is that line? Because I kind of look at it with Bo Nix like maybe he's trying to find that line, and I think Phillip Rivers was a guy who was on the right side of that line a lot.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers, I don't know if you noticed that, but I've been around that guy. Gosh darn it, he would never cuss. He would never swear. He just smiled. He loved it. Get him in get him to play dominoes. Phillip start playing dominoes and hanging out with the bros and just hanging out. Just a good guy. Wouldn't he? So I don't think he meant anything intentional. He would get in your face. Hey, you ready to go? Don't be scared. You're ready. I make a block. Hey, 41 coming at you. Be ready. Al Wilson. Al, you better. You ain't at Tennessee today. Al, Neil's coming for you, boy. You got, just that. And so he would make those type of statements and yell at guys like, "You ain't ready. We coming for you." Okay, you look a little timid. So I mean, I think that's what he was, and then he was hard on himself as well. But yeah, there's a line that you cross, and there's a line you can't cross because you have to realize no matter how upset you may be, I've never seen Drew or Phillip or certain guys come back at the head coach in a condescending way. They just like, even though the coach could be wrong, they would have those discussions. There's nothing wrong with having a discussion and being a little heated, but what do you consider disrespect? If you're saying that, using F-bombs and telling them to shut up and do all that stuff, that's disrespect. If you're having a heated conversation about X and O's and what you see, that didn't happen, coach, the safety rotated this way. That's not what happened. Now, that's okay. Healthy conversation, healthy, banter is okay. But when you're, upset and you're losing it because other players around you, especially as a quarterback, you're the leader of the team. And I'm not saying Bo Nix do. I think this guy's talented. I think he can run. He can throw across his body. He can move. He can go on the run. He can throw on the run. He can do a lot of things. He's a guy who can beat you with his legs, too. So I do think this young guy has a lot.
Before I let you go, when I said that you would be joining me, I got this text in, so I'm going to read it. I can't confirm anything in it, but I want to read it. He says, "I heard that you have Lorenzo Neal as a guest on your show today. Tell him that I appreciated watching him when he played for Lemoore High School in Lemoore, California. Me and some fellow sailors from Naval Air Station Lemoore would go watch his high school games," and put in parentheses that he dominated, and he was a one-man wrecking ball. So that was one of my listeners bringing up the glory days of Lorenzo Neal. I wanted to share that with you since you were joining me.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to tell you, you have some tremendous listeners, and you're a tremendous talent yourself. And yeah, back in the day, I would run over some people in high school. It was a man amongst boys. So those were the good old days. But I tell you, thank you again for that. But I look for this game to really be physical. These are two teams. When you think about what Denver went out and did in free agency, going out and getting a guy from San Francisco, two of these guys, I'm calling that, and we know Hines, I called him Hines 67, Greenlaw, this guy would hit you. He plays with bad intention. So I think this is going to be a physical game. I think you're going to see both teams fighting. Look at the Chargers. Chargers find a way to win this game. They're 3 games undefeated in their division. This is a big game You know, even though they had, even though they had dropped one game, this is a huge game because it's in the division. These games count as 1.5 at least, so this is a big game. Don't think for a minute that the head coach over there in Denver, Sean Payton, not telling these guys how important this is and how they're walking around and they're practicing with great vigor and with execution. And our Harbaugh is doing the same thing because both these teams understand the importance of the magnitude of this football game on this Sunday in LA.
You could hear more from Lorenzo on Believe in Chargers. Follow him on Twitter while you're at it, at Lorenzo Neal. Not every day I get insight from a guy that played nearly 2 decades in the National Football League, and it was everything I hoped it would be. Lorenzo Neal, really appreciate the time, sir, and enjoy the game on Sunday.
No worries. Cheers. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, will do. I'll take you up on that. Lorenzo Neal, 17-year NFL vet, 5 of those years with the Chargers, then in San Diego. Probably a member of the last great halfback, running back, fullback combo, right? You think about it, you think of some of the great ones. The one that immediately comes to my mind, Jay Novacek and Daryl Johnson. I'm sorry, a different player on the Dallas Cowboys. But you think about some of the great fullback, running back combos. Ward Dunn when he was running behind Mike Allstott. You look at LT and Lorenzo Neal, both named to the all-decade team for the 2000s, and because of the way the game has changed, and not only the minimization of the fullback, but also of the running back position in general, or at least we had a spell of that recently, you just don't see backfields constructed like those Charger teams had under Schottenheimer with LaDainian Tomlinson and Lorenzo Neal. And the complementary way they played with each other, how Lorenzo Neal opened up holes for LT to run through, record-breaking season. They don't make them like that anymore in the NFL. But that tandem was phenomenal for those years, and that's when the Chargers were. What happened in the playoffs, obviously, they didn't ultimately get to where they want to go, but that was the spell of time. We think so much of the AFC West as like the Broncos dominating or the Chiefs dominating because the Chiefs are doing that now. There was a spell there. There was a window there where it was the Chargers who were the best team in that division. It was the Chargers who everybody was trying to figure out a way to beat. And that tandem of LaDainian Tomlinson and Lorenzo Neal was a big reason why. Great insight from Lorenzo there. The more I watch Bo Nix, the more I agree with Lorenzo Neal's sentiment there that and I think it's because of the running ability that Bo Nix has. They don't look similar. They don't remind me of one another as much anymore as Bo Nix did coming out of college. Now, one thing I will say, the student of the game stuff, that does apply to Bo Nix, right? Bo Nix is all about football. So I think he is a student of the game. And I don't think Lorenzo Neal was saying Bo Nix isn't. He's just highlighting what made Drew Brees great. There are some similarities, but they just look more different as time goes on. And even to Sean Payton, Bo Nix looks different. Sean Payton has talked about this numerous times, about how he didn't even realize that Bo Nix could run the way he could. So coming out of Oregon, you saw the similarities. Those similarities still exist, but they just don't look like the same player. And if you're someone in Lorenzo's position that's, on any game week looking at the opposing quarterback and you're saying, yeah, this guy doesn't look like Drew Brees. No, he doesn't. But some of the personality, I think the student of the game stuff, Bo Nix has that. And that's what made, according to one of his teammates, what made Drew Brees great. 719-24-7, 13-13. When we return, get into, it was coordinator day with the Denver Broncos. So Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator, you'll get his take on what happened on that leverage penalty. More Drive Time Sports after this on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour 2 on this Thursday. So glad to have you. Over the next few weeks, we here at Extra Sports 1300 are going to be giving away $1,000 5 times a day. It's called the 5K a day. Maybe you've heard some of the national keywords throughout the day. Well, let me be one of the first to tell you about this keyword. If you text SCORE, that's SCORE, to 95819, you will be entered to win $1,000. We've done this 4 times today. This will be the 5th, obviously. Tomorrow, 5 more times. And every weekday, Monday through Friday, 5 times a day, your chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. Again, the national keyword right now is SCORE, SCORE. Text that to 95819. Speaking of winning, Luke picked himself up a 4-pack of tickets to Air Force Boise State. I have Switchbacks tickets to give away this hour. So we're just giving stuff away. I've said this before. We are not above bribing you. And we'll do it. And we're happy to do it. Today was coordinator day with the Denver Broncos. Actually, you know what? Let me back up a little bit. Because I think what's more pertinent right this second, I will get to Darren Rizzi's comments on the leverage call. But the injury report just came out for the Denver Broncos. Just in this last commercial break. Evan Ingram did not practice. Dre Greenlaw did not practice. Both are concerning in their own way. We've talked about Dre Greenlaw. He's been a thing. The Dre Greenlaw injury that he suffered all the way back on July 31st, he has not been able to shake it. And Sean Payton called the injury nebulous. A soft tissue injury, nebulous would be a good word to describe it, because you just don't know how it's going to respond. And you don't know when the player, especially one that has to move laterally and forward and back as much as Dre Greenlaw has to at his position, you just don't know how that kind of an injury is going to respond. And so now we're sitting here on Thursday, just a few days away from the biggest game that the Broncos have played yet. One of the bigger games they'll play all season, because 2 games against the Chargers, 2 against the Chiefs, 2 against the Raiders. Broncos want to win the division. Those are their most important game. I really believe Sean Payton felt like Dre Greenlaw would be back now, would be ready for Sunday. It does not look like he's going to be. Now, that the nebulous nature of his injury could work both ways. Maybe Dre Greenlaw wakes up tomorrow and the quad feels amazing. But we've gone through this routine going on 3 weeks now. Dre Greenlaw doesn't practice. Sean Payton either says don't ask about it or gives some, optimistic spin on it. Yesterday it was, he's following our timeline, whatever. And then he doesn't play. Rinse and repeat last week. And we're doing the same thing this week. And next week with Cincinnati, that would be a game that on paper, at least, you say, all right, if getting Dre Greenlaw back for that one would be cool, but this one, they really need Dre Greenlaw. You saw what the Indianapolis Colts did to the middle of the Broncos defense. Vance Joseph talked about today how much the Broncos struggled with Tyler Warren early in that football game. Chargers don't have a Tyler Warren, but with the emergence of Quentin Johnston, or Quentin Johnston finally looking like the player that the Chargers thought he would be when they drafted him, you heard Lorenzo Neal, former Chargers quarterback, talk about how important the reacquisition of Keenan Allen has been. Ladd McConkey is going to be that guy, and he's faster than Tyler Warren. He's shiftier than Tyler Warren. You need not only Dre Greenlaw to be available, you need him to be right. You need him to be healthy. And I don't know that he's going to be either one of those things. But before week 1, before the Titans game, I said this is going to be a storyline throughout the year. With Dre Greenlaw's history, with the nature of this particular injury, Dre Greenlaw's health is going to be a storyline that continues, and not for good reason. As for the other, right now the Denver Broncos have 2 of their 3 most important offseason acquisitions unhealthy leading into a divisional opponent. I would put J.K. Dobbins in that mix as well. Evan Ingram's number 1. And then you could order, I think you would say J.K. Dobbins would be 2. That's how I would rank it. But 2 of the 3 biggest additions to this Broncos team are not practicing. They have yet to have Dre Greenlaw in a game. This is a problem. And now with Evan Ingram, this is something that has popped up. So it's concerning in a different way. Not concerning in the sense that this injury has been there and it's, it's not going away. Evan Ingram's injury is a new one, we think. He was not on the injury report last week. He's on the injury report this week. That would lead me to believe that this is a new injury. But could it be something that he was dealing with? Could this be part of the reason why Evan Ingram hasn't looked the major chess piece that Sean Payton made him out to be through the first 2 games? And with the story of this season being the Broncos trying to be better so they'll achieve more, 2 of the guys that you brought in to help you do that are unavailable to you, have been hampered. Evan Ingram left the first game of the season with an injury. Now he's got a different injury. Dre Greenlaw hasn't been on the field yet. But this was part of it, and I'll throw J.K. Dobbins into the mix. That, thankfully for the Broncos, he's been healthy so far. But the reason why the Broncos were able to get all 3 of those guys, despite still being somewhat under the dark cloud of Russell Wilson's dead cap money, is because other teams looked at these 3 players and said, it's too much of an injury risk. We're not going to commit the dollars to these guys. Every single one of their teams, Jacksonville, LA, and San Francisco, all said, it's not worth it to us. San Francisco, you could make an argument. It's a little bit because of the different tax bracket their quarterback is in now. They're starting to make these difficult decisions, but the Jags, they don't have salary cap issues. They just cut Evan Ingram. Chargers opted to have Najee Harris over J.K. Dobbins. And then they, of course, added Amarion Hampton in the draft. You can't say that this news is blindsiding you if you're the Denver Broncos. This was the reason why they were available. And you can hope that it's better. And the Broncos have a very good medical staff and a strength and conditioning staff. They have been one of the healthier teams in the NFL since Sean Payton has arrived. But now they're kind of meeting their match with Dre Greenlaw and now Evan Ingram. And you may be without the finishing touch on the offensive side, that acquisition to make the offense whole, to make it exactly in Sean Payton's image, that may not be available against the LA Chargers. And you have the guy that was going to tie in all the good you already had on the Broncos defense together in Dre Greenlaw and, help one of your biggest weaknesses. Because what you saw Sunday against the Indianapolis Colts, that's not a new phenomenon. I understand Alex Singleton is coming off of a significant injury, but what Alex Singleton does best is tackle, not cover. It's tackle. Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram are here for a reason. They're supposed to be consequential, difference-making players. And here going into week 3, both of them are not practicing. And I don't know if it's a saying, but it's certainly a common held belief in the NFL. You only get less healthy as the season goes on. You only get more banged up. You only get more injured. Teams lose more players as the season goes on. They don't gain players. So the Dre Greenlaw thing is troubling in its own way. But now Evan Ingram popping up with this back injury, going up against one of the NFL's best defenses. It's a problem. 719-24-7. 1313. Coming up next, you will hear from Broncos special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi. What went wrong on the leverage play, and does he think it even should have been called? Busy day for sports in Colorado Springs on Saturday. You got Air Force Boise State. Also, the Switchbacks hosting Sacramento Republic. Come watch the Switchbacks continue their push for the playoffs while celebrating Latin culture, capped off with a spectacular fireworks show. Kickoff at 6 p.m. You want to go? 4 tickets for you. If you are the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and your name to 719-247-1313. That synced up well with the bumper music there. Get to this text from Brett before you hear from Broncos special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi about the leverage play on Sunday. Says, I agree with you, Ryan. When the Broncos signed those two guys, meaning Greenlaw and Ingram, it gave me flashbacks to all the often injured players they hoped would come back and be 120% of what they were before the injury. If there is an injury, if you pick up what I'm putting down. I don't know that I fully am, but I'm with you on most of that. And here's the thing that separates Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram from other players that probably come to mind when I read Brett's text. They didn't take a flyer on Evan Ingram and Dre Greenlaw. That wasn't what these signings were. Oh, this guy's available. He has some talent. Let's bring him in and see what we got. No, Sean Payton said, I need a joker. Enter Evan Ingram. The most important piece of Sean Payton's offense outside of quarterback is a joker, and Evan Ingram was supposed to be that guy. Meanwhile, they brought in Dre Greenlaw to help fix a very real problem that was laid out bare for everyone to see against the Colts. They're not great at covering at the second level of the defense. That is a weakness of it. Just that position, inside linebacker, has been a bit of a weakness for the Denver Broncos. I love, by the way, that Lorenzo Neal last hour brought up Al Wilson. You go Brandon Marshall, it's one of those positions that has for a while now been a little bit of a issue for the Denver Broncos. But many Broncos teams recently have had bigger problems than inside linebacker. But now that the Broncos have so much other stuff right, their pass rushing group, their offensive line, they got Pat Surtain. Now you kind of go down the priority list and you're like, oh, here's still a weakness. We can get Dre Greenlaw to help that. So these guys aren't buying low because of injury and just seeing what happens, like the Denver Nuggets picking up Russell Westbrook, right? Like, well, let's see what he has. We don't have anything else there. Let's just bring this guy in and see what he's got. Although, now that I'm saying that, that's probably not the best comparison because the Nuggets have real bench issues and Russell Westbrook was supposed to help those. So, I retract that example. But the point here is that the Broncos brought in Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram as significant acquisitions that were supposed to help the Denver Broncos in a significant way. And they can't do that if they are injured and not playing football. So that's the difference here. Yeah, the NFL guys get banged up. It happens. Yes, there are many teams outside the Denver Broncos that will take a chance on a guy who's got a long injury history. and just see what happens. That's not this. And J.K. Dobbins is another one. I'm not predicting anything. I'm not hoping for anything. Nobody is. But I'm just saying J.K. Dobbins is in that group with those other two guys where the Broncos brought him in to be a difference maker. And you can clearly see right now that R.J. Harvey's not ready. R.J. Harvey's not ready to be a true complement to J.K. Dobbins, which is okay because he's played 2 games as a rookie. But it puts even more on J.K. Dobbins to make sure he is the difference maker. And when the Broncos have utilized him, Sean Payton, he's been very good. He has been what the Broncos hoped he would be. But he's another one of those players that the Broncos bought low on because his previous employer's like, I don't know if it's worth committing to a guy with that injury history, or maybe we can do better. Broncos brought him in to be a difference maker. Now, they kind of had to do it with some of these guys, right? Because of the Russell Wilson, contract and that dead cap money. I'm not saying that the Broncos made a mistake here. The mistake is perhaps buying into the idea that Brett highlighted of, well, this guy's been hurt perpetually. He's not going to get hurt here. Yeah, there was always that chance, and I think the Broncos knew that. They had to bring these guys in. The problem is there need to be difference makers for this team, and they're not just taking a flyer on these guys. So the leverage play, shifting gears here. Darren Rizzi, special teams coordinator. Sean Payton already took ownership of what happened at the end of the Colts game by saying he called, not Rizzi, Sean Payton called a fairly aggressive kick block when maybe it wasn't necessary to do it, considering that Schrader already had to kick from 60 yards out. There's another piece of the puzzle that falls into place with what Darren Rizzi said about it. You're going to hear him talk about that play, but then you also hear him talk about the validity of the call itself.
The thing that's disappointing to me is the execution part. That's on me. As a coach, any coach, if you go out, we're not lined up correctly, and we didn't execute the call that was called. And so, that's what keeps you up at night as a coach. So as far as the penalty goes, listen, the leveraging call, was it letter of the law, a foul? Yes. Are there many of those throughout the year that don't get called? Yes. So I get it. I guess probably because the play was in an escalated situation. But again, we'll learn from it, move on.
An escalated situation. That's a good way. It's a good way to put it. As much as we would like officials, or as much as we say we would like officials to put away the flags, put away the whistle late in the game, let the players decide it. We say that we want that until there is a missed call, what we think is a missed call, and then we're like, why aren't the referees doing their job? It's the nature of being a fan. But I think that Darren Rizzi is right, that they made that call there in that situation because it was the last play of the game, is the most consequential play of the game, all that kind of stuff, and they felt like they had to make that call. And he used the same words I did on Monday, letter of the law. Letter of the law. That absolutely is leverage. But what you didn't hear Darren Rizzi mention that he did, they never ran that before. That particular block, they didn't run it. They had it in the playbook. They hadn't ran it in a game before. Doesn't that kind of compound the issue a little bit here? We didn't run the call that was called. No, that's probably not. We didn't run the call that was called. It didn't execute. That's what he's saying there. But the fact of the matter is it was the right call. You wish they hadn't made that call because it was a little ticky-tack. But again, that was not why the Broncos lost. The Broncos lost right after that, but again, one of the best defenses in the league. I know that the Colts are having a moment right now. Get a stop. Force them to punt once during the game. Just once. See what happens. Yeah, maybe don't be so aggressive. I appreciate what Darren Rizzi is saying, and I know that it's on the players to go out there and execute what it's called. Got to put your team in a position to succeed. And it's 2 weeks now where at some point in the game, Sean Payton has not done that. And if something like that happens this week, they will be punished for it dearly. There's no way they get away with it. Any of Sean Payton's mistakes, like the play calling on offense in week 1, like calling that particular kick block in week 2, anything like that happens against the Chargers are going to absolutely exploit it. That's one of the joys of playing in the AFC West. And every single team in the AFC West has this reality. That you can absolutely be outcoached. The battle of wits that goes on will go on, has already started, but will continue in the AFC West. It raises everybody's game, right? But if Sean Payton makes a mistake, maybe Brian Callahan can't take advantage. Colts did take advantage. Chargers will 1,000% take advantage. Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Pete Carroll. I don't know if Pete Carroll necessarily has the personnel to be able to fully take advantage of it. But these kind of coaching blunders, these kind of coaching mistakes in divisional play with the coaches that are in this division, it will hurt you 10 times out of 10. You won't be able to get away with it. So we could talk about the Broncos pass rush and Pat Surtain and Bo Nix and all these guys needing to be at their best or better than they were either in week 1 or week 2. But first, let's look at Sean Payton. He's got to be at his best. And since he's arrived, this is really one of the... I remember the Seattle game to open last year. I thought he made a mistake putting a little bit too much on Bo Nix for that opener. But for the most part, Sean Payton, we haven't had conversations about Sean Payton needing to be better. Unless it's people complaining about how some rookie or one of their fantasy players isn't getting on the field. That's one thing Sean Payton has had to answer a lot, and now he's talking about R.J. Harvey in that way. But most of the time, we're not looking at Sean Payton first. We're talking about the players that he has, and through 2 weeks, he's as culpable in the Broncos' struggles and the Broncos' missteps as any of the players. 719-247-1313. Another number for you. 95819. That is the number to text our national keyword for the 5K a day. Your chance to win $1,000. The keyword is SCORE. SCORE. Text that to 95819. 819. You should get a bounce back letting you know that your entry is confirmed. And good luck. And make sure you're listening all day, every weekday here on Extra Sports 1300 for more chances to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. Last chance to get your votes in for our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week. Give you the nominees here in case you are curious. I mean, you can find them at extrasports1300.com, but they are Silas Lambert of Colorado Springs Christian, Katie Waldron of Whitefield, Devin Jane of the Vanguard School, and Sela Joyner from Liberty. To find out what they did to deserve nomination and to cast your vote, go to extrasports1300.com. And while you're there, make sure you fill out a nomination form so we can recognize a student athlete that you deem worthy of our Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Obviously, the most consequential thing about Sunday is the divisional standings, right? Chargers trying to go 3-0 in the division. Broncos trying to start 1-0. Sean Payton has talked about it a lot, the importance of winning divisional games. The idea that you really can't be swept by anybody like they were last year against the Chargers. So this is an important game for the Denver Broncos. But there's also another more national storyline. What will be the conversation if Justin Herbert has a great game against the Broncos? Well, I was thinking about this. So right now you could say, and I know it's too early for MVP conversation, but let's have it. Why not? It's Thursday. And one of those guys is playing tonight, and Josh Allen. So let's talk about it here. If Justin Herbert has a great game, starts off 3-0 and beats the Broncos defense, is Justin Herbert getting MVP? I mean, early, I get it. But is he the front runner? Or, because I thought about that. Like, oh, man, it should be about time for Justin Herbert to get some MVP love the way that he has played through 2 games. And if he were to do something similar to the Denver Broncos defense, then surely people would be looking at Justin Herbert and saying he has a real MVP case. And then I remembered what happened in the Indy game. I know Justin Herbert is different than Daniel Jones, but if Justin Herbert has a day, would the conversation be more Justin Herbert early front runner for MVP, or would it be what's wrong with the Broncos defense? 2 weeks in a row now, they were lit up. And do people all of a sudden not look at the Denver Broncos defense the way they did coming into the season? I'll tell you the way I look at it. The way I feel still about the Broncos defense, warts and all, because they got a couple of them. If Justin Herbert has himself a great day, I will still look at that as a tremendous accomplishment going up against the Denver Broncos defense. If Justin Herbert were to carve up the Denver Broncos in a similar way to what Daniel Jones did, and doesn't some part of you think that he should be able to? I mean, we're talking Daniel Jones versus Justin Herbert here. I think come Monday, Chargers win, Justin Herbert has a great game. Justin Herbert will now, the drum beats will begin for Justin Herbert to be the front runner for MVP. And he'd be deserving. Like, I'm really interested to see what Indianapolis is moving forward. I know that the Broncos are not a perfect defense. I have more questions about them than most people do, but I still think that the Broncos defense is one of the better defenses in the National Football League when you stack everything up, right? But they weren't even close to that on Sunday. I still think this is going to be one of the better defenses, and if Justin Herbert carves them up, I mean, he would have beaten Kansas City and beaten the Broncos defense. I think that's a good early case. And what do you say, early case, or he's put on the radar, right? Justin Herbert, I don't think anybody was talking about Justin Herbert as an MVP candidate. And then he will have to fight against the narrative MVPs, which is not as much of an issue now, if you think about it. You knew that the voters weren't going to go Josh Allen back-to-back years. Right? They just weren't going to. They gave Josh Allen his MVP. They are not going to look his way again. Not this year. One of the narratives, if the Bengals defense was just a little bit better, Bengals get in the playoffs and Joe Burrow is the MVP. Well, where's Joe Burrow now? Out for 3 months. Lamar Jackson opened the season with a loss that was not his fault, but the fact of the matter is the Baltimore Ravens lost again to an elite team. And not that they're supposed to take this stuff into account, but Lamar Jackson did not advance as far as people think that he should in the playoff. So a couple of these, narrative MVPs, because I thought going into the year that a lot of people would be almost saying somebody has to give us a reason not to vote for Lamar. There's been enough discourse throughout the offseason that I think there are some voters that even vote for Josh Allen. They're like, should I have voted for Lamar? The numbers he put up, the season that the Ravens had. I think there were plenty of voters who started the season going into that Sunday night game and saying, Lamar's my guy unless proved otherwise. And Josh Allen rallied the Bills from 15 points down in the fourth quarter against Lamar Jackson. Now, the Ravens have a game next week, assuming that the Chiefs get right against the New York Giants. That will be another high-profile game. And if Lamar Jackson plays well and the Baltimore Ravens win, then he'll be good. I fear for Lamar Jackson's MVP chances, if he loses to Kansas City next week, and I don't care how Kansas City looks against the Giants, if Lamar has 2 losses against Allen and Mahomes in the first month, he will not be able to overcome that to win the MVP. He just won't, because those are the games that people are looking at with Lamar Jackson. He has graduated from the stat accumulation phase. Clearly, based on last year, the numbers don't faze anybody. Lamar Jackson had one of the statistically most significant seasons in the history of football, and people looked at it and went, yeah, Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson's got 2 definite showcase games. Maybe if Burrow were healthy, and this hurts his case too because Burrow's not healthy. So those Bengals-Ravens games aren't as high profile anymore. But the Bills and the Chiefs first. If Lamar Jackson in the first month, and by Lamar Jackson I say the Ravens, if the Ravens lose both of those games, there's no way Lamar Jackson can win the MVP. Regardless of how the game plays out, whether it's on Lamar or not. because clearly they have held things that are not Lamar Jackson's fault against Lamar. I think it is opening up nicely for Justin Herbert. And it's not completely by process of elimination here. The guy's played great. And if he does it again against the Broncos defense on Sunday, starts off 3-0, top of that division with all the hype around said AFC West, I think you're going to hear a lot of Justin Herbert and the MVP brought up in the same sentence. It's way too early. I get it. I'm with you, but I say that, and I was thinking about it this afternoon. 719-24-7, 1313. Chris says Sam Darnold might be the best comparison. He finally had a great year, and there was no MVP talk last year. Herbert needs to do this at least 2 years before they'll consider him. That's interesting. Because I don't think that Justin Herbert's issue here is that he has been bad in previous regular seasons. It's been the playoffs for him. And we know how these MVP voters work. They don't like to be spurned. They don't like to have something that maybe in some way they feel like undercuts their MVP vote, right? Like what happened with Jokic. Well, he's never won a title. Like some MVP voters felt like burned by the fact that Nikola Jokic had not won a title and had multiple MVPs, like one has to do with the other. Justin Herbert, the conversation has never been Justin Herbert, regular season, bad quarterback, like it was with Sam Darnold. I would go the other way, and I would say that people would absolutely vote for Justin Herbert as the MVP if the Chargers win this division. Now, I talked about this through the lens of Bo Nix. Now, I said, do people really believe that the Denver Broncos will be the best team in the AFC West? Because why aren't more people staking their claim to Bo Nix being the MVP? Wouldn't he have to be an MVP candidate if the Broncos win the AFC West? And yet there's a whole slew of guys that have shorter odds than Bo Nix did coming into the season for MVP. But with Justin Herbert, I thought that the Chargers had an opportunity. I didn't pick them to win the division. But I said the Chargers absolutely are the biggest threat to Kansas City. If they are able to win the AFC West, I think that people will have no problem voting for Justin Herbert as the MVP. But what will happen thereafter is that if he has a performance in the first round of the playoffs like he did against Houston, he will be killed at an epic level by the media. Right? If he falters, it'd be like, you're an MVP, and they'll add that to the mix. You're an MVP. You were the MVP this season, and you flamed out in the postseason. The criticism of Justin Herbert, if he wins MVP and falters in the playoffs, will be as high as it's ever been. I don't think that people would have a problem voting for Justin Herbert for MVP. He's new. right? They like new. They don't like voting for people again, like with Lamar Jackson last year. Don't like voting for guys they've already voted for. They want something new. They want something fresh. What the Chargers are absolutely that. And I know Justin Herbert's been around, but the idea of the Chargers being elite, Justin Herbert playing plus Justin Herbert playing at a high level, the vulnerability that people see with Kansas City right now after their 0-2 start. No, I think they would vote for Justin Herbert for MVP. But also, as I said earlier, they're not going to go back to Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson is 0-1 in the 2 games that people are going to judge him on. They're judging Buffalo, Kansas City. He's 0-1. Burrow's out for 3 months. I think some MVP voters are searching. And I can't think of a better guy to at least keep an eye on right now than Justin Herbert. And I do expect the Broncos to be better than they were against Indy. And I think you'll be able to look at it and tip your cap to Justin Herbert rather than going, what the heck happened, like you are after the Colts game. Daniel Jones did what? Wouldn't be as surprising if Justin Herbert did it. But we'll see. We'll see. It all depends. If the Broncos go out and the defense dominates and the Broncos win, yeah. Nope, all that goes away. And then it's back to the Denver Broncos. They got right. They figured it out. Bo Nix this, Sean Payton that. All it takes is one. In the NFL, all it takes is one win to change all of that stuff around. Look at the Detroit Lions. 719-24-7. 1313. We'll come back with the 3 stories that are driving the show right after this. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on a Thursday. Appreciate you consuming the show in whatever way you choose to do it on a daily basis, whether you're listening on air, online, or through the app, or maybe you're watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram at XTRA Sports 1300. You can be rewarded for consuming the show because we have our 5K a day going on right now. It started today. It will continue 5 days a week for a very long time. So that means many, many, many chances for you to win $1,000. Like right now, the national keyword to text will be SCORE, SCORE. Text that to 95819 and you'll be entered to win. And then make sure you tune in tomorrow morning. I'll just let you in on a little secret. The national keywords begin at 6 a.m. So there you go. And run throughout the day. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. We do have Thursday Night Football coming up at the bottom of the hour. I think we're back to our normally scheduled Thursday night programming where it's like, I don't know how good of a game this is going to be. In terms of, I don't know how competitive it's going to be. I know that I probably should be selling it. Key divisional matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. But there are reasons to listen. The Buffalo Bills are, how's this for a pun, a wagon right now. You know, wagon, circle the wagons, Buffalo Bills. Yeah. And we are on, if anybody is holding a ticket for Mike McDaniel being the first coach fired, you have some, I'm not saying it's not interesting. I'm just saying it may not be a competitive football contest tonight, but we shall see. Our coverage from Westwood One begins at the bottom of the hour. In the meantime, let's get into the three stories that are driving this show. All right, story number one, of course. Stephon Diggs and Cardi B are expecting. No, that's not the top story. Why would it be top story? It's not. This is.
Well, I think for whatever reason, we're allowing conversations to become bigger than what they are. We oftentimes forget that it's a big stadium and a lot of people are talking at the same time. So you got to be a little bit louder and more vocal. So that was just something as simple as he asked me what happened on a play. I told him. I turned. He couldn't quite hear. Turned back and told him again. There was no issue. So, it's just a quick conversation with the head coach. Nothing pressing.
Yes. The very popular trope from sports press conference podiums, blaming the media. We are making a mountain out of a molehill, as we tend to do. You did turn back and appeared to say something louder to Sean Payton, but you were also doing it with a very angry face while you were shaking your hands. That is not a guy that is just trying to raise his volume so Sean Payton could hear. That is a person who is visibly frustrated. And these are three separate instances in just 2 weeks where Bo Nix looks this way. I don't look at any one of them as inherently alarming, but you string them together, you put them all together, and you say this is becoming a pattern of Bo Nix maybe letting his emotions go a little bit crazy here. showing up Lucas Kroll with the crazy pointing on where he should be, yelling at Jeffrey Simmons of the Tennessee Titans, now yelling at his coach. You were yelling at him. Maybe you weren't angry at him, but you were yelling in his general direction. You were visibly frustrated. Do not try to gaslight us, Bo Nix. The question is not whether we're making too much out of this in terms of that one interaction, making too much out of conversations, because we're not. We're not making too much out of it. You were yelling at the guy and you were angry. The question just becomes, is all of this okay? Because I look at it and say Bo Nix still finds himself on the wrong line, wrong side of the line between fiery competitor and a guy that is maybe letting his emotions overcome him on a weekly basis. You know, there are other quarterbacks who at times have yelled at teammates, who have trash-talked opponents, who have yelled in the direction of their coach. Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Phillip Rivers. But they all have something that Bo Nix doesn't have yet. It's a resume. And with that resume comes belief, comes some leeway. When Peyton Manning gets on somebody, you're like, Peyton Manning's probably right. Right? Because he's Peyton Manning. When Bo Nix does it, it doesn't come off the same way. This is a young quarterback. And I think part of his development is that he needs to know when the right time to let those emotions out. And I don't think he has done it at the right time the last couple of weeks. And I don't think it's a good look that Bo Nix is yelling at his coach. I don't think it's a good look that Bo Nix has to be restrained by his team when yelling at Jeffrey Simmons. And I don't think it's a good look for Bo Nix to show up his receiver like he did last week. When it's him, it looks like he's losing his grip a little bit on the game. That the frustrations that he must be feeling, and let's be honest, these two games have been quite frustrating for the Denver Broncos. It looks like it's getting to him. That's not a trait that you want in your quarterback. I know some quarterbacks over the years, I mentioned them, have gotten away with it. I personally prefer my quarterbacks to be more Joe Montana, more Joe Cool. The occasional flare-up is going to happen. But when you're in year two and just beginning year two, that's not going to be perceived as anything other than Bo Nix is losing his grip on his emotions. And also maybe walk up to Sean Payton if it's about not that I'm indulging, Bo Nix's gaslighting of everybody, but maybe if Sean Payton can't hear you because it's a loud stadium, maybe just take 2 steps towards him and then speak to him. Just, I don't know. There are different ways, several different ways to skin a cat. To me, if it's about the stadium and not about you being angry, take a couple of steps in. Make sure he hears you. Bo Nix was angry. And it's not a great look, and the media are not evil for asking him about it. Story number 2, I will say this. More concerning for the Denver Broncos. What Bo Nix's emotions are concerning. But what is more concerning is the injury report that has been put out today in advance of a very significant game, and that lists both Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram as DNP, as in did not practice. Dre Greenlaw still dealing with the quad injury he's dealt with for going on 2 months now. And now Evan Ingram's got this back issue. He wasn't even listed on the injury report going in to the Indy game. And they're different injuries and they're different situations with Dre Greenlaw, his persisting, maybe Evan Ingram's just popping up. But they do share something in common, and it is how troublesome these injuries are. Not even the nature of those injuries, although back and a soft tissue injury, those aren't good injuries, right? Like there's some in sports, high ankle sprain, you hate to hear that. Back, soft tissue, there are these buzzwords when it comes to injuries in sports that you go, ooh, that's not good. So, soft tissue for Dre Greenlaw, back for Evan Ingram, not great. But the link between the two that I think is the most important is the fact that these are not guys that, despite their injury history, the Broncos wanted to bring in just to see. Maybe they catch lightning in a bottle. They brought them in to be difference makers. And you can project the difference that Dre Greenlaw will have on the Denver defense after watching them against the Colts. And you could play back any number of sound bites from Sean Payton talking about how important the role that Evan Ingram now fills is. And these were guys that already had injury concerns. That's why they were available for the Denver Broncos to pick up. And you can see them being out, especially Dre Greenlaw, how much it impacts the Broncos defense. And in week one, a little bit less of Evan Ingram than maybe the Broncos will wanted to. They could have used more of him. So these are significant injuries for the Denver Broncos, significant in terms of the roles of these two players. We don't know the significance in terms of how long they're going to be out. Dre Greenlaw, we're, 2 weeks and counting, 2 games missed and counting, but it's a problem. I understand why the Broncos brought them in. I saw the vision, I understood it, and I get why they signed him. But this was the risk. This was always the risk of signing these two guys. And it's already coming to fruition leading into week 3. Let's make it a clean sweep for Denver Broncos stories, unless you are taking me seriously that Cardi B and Stephon Diggs are a big story. Here's story number 3.
The thing that's disappointing to me is the execution part. That's on me. As a coach, any coach, if you go out, we're not lined up correctly, and we didn't execute the call that was called. And so, that's what keeps you up at night as a coach. So as far as the penalty goes, listen, the leveraging call, was it letter of the law of foul? Yes. Are there many of those throughout the year that don't get called? Yes. So I get it. I guess probably because the play was in an escalated situation. But again, we'll learn from it, move on.
That is Broncos special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi, who basically wishes that his team would have been bailed out for their mistakes. But unfortunately, they were not. That's what he was expressing. Yes, we messed up. We wanted the referees to let it go. We did not want that call to be made because we want to get bailed out for our mistakes. And you know what? That's a very human emotion from Darren Rizzi. But there you get from the guy coaching that phase of the game, basically backing up all the conversation that has already happened this week. The Denver Broncos messed up, and it was a leverage penalty. Was it why they lost the game? No. But special teams That's the phase. Like, they don't get a lot of opportunities to make up for it. Right? Kicker misses it. Will Lutz. I mean, if the conversation was not about leverage, let's say Daniel Jones just led the Colts down the field and they scored a touchdown to win the game. We'd still be having a special teams conversation because it would be Will Lutz missing the field goal. If they hadn't committed the leverage penalty, we'd be talking about Will Lutz missing field goals. So special teams doesn't have it easy. I empathize with them, but they messed up. Sean Payton called too aggressive of a call for that distance, right? That situational football, down and distance, they talk about it all the time. Time, down, distance, all of that kind of stuff. You got to be right. And Sean Payton wasn't. And he threw his team into a bad situation, and they made a mistake, and it was the last thing they did in that game. One of the last things. They tried to block the next kick, of course. 719-24-7. 13-13. Back after this. Buffalo, Miami coming up in mere moments if you're wondering where you should go to watch the game. How about Cleats Bar and Grill, your football headquarters for Air Force College football or any kind of football, really. And on Thursdays, you could check out their special 10 wings and a 60-ounce pitcher of domestic for $20 or craft draft for $25. They got 19 screens. You'll be able to see the game. Don't worry about that. That's Cleats 6624 Delmonico Drive. Or who am I kidding? You're just going to Google it. Put it in your maps. Antonio Pierce, spurn lover of the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know that this is the guy I want to be supporting my argument when it comes to Tom Brady and this conflict of interest, but he did say it would be foolish to not think Tom Brady will share information from calling games with the Raiders. And Pierce says he knows this because Pierce himself got information shared to him by Brady. Now, Ben Johnson has said he's not going to tell Tom Brady anything sensitive. Sean Payton was asked about it. He didn't think it was that big of a deal. Now, I don't know. I think we don't even have to go to, and I pointed this out the other day, we don't even have to get down to the level of Tom Brady spilling the beans intentionally with Chip Kelly. Like, it's what Ben Johnson said. You're not going to tell him anything. Now, he didn't say it in that way, but basically he's implying that, yeah, I'm not going to go in and tell Brady what maybe I would tell Greg Olsen. And that therein lies a problem right off the bat. Like, we don't even have to get deeper into this. We don't have to go even more nefarious with all of this stuff. It's just the idea that there is a role that Brady has in which he receives privileged information. Even if he doesn't take it to the team, how much of that privileged information is he going to get? He's not able to do his job as a analyst at the best to his abilities because coaches are going in saying, I'm not going to tell this guy anything. So it starts there, and if you just want to further drive home the point, then you could go, well, he's meeting with Chip Kelly 3 or 4 times a week. It's a conflict of interest. It is a bigger deal than Sean Payton wants to make it out to be. And the NFL needs to do something about that. Tom Brady doesn't need to be thrown in the gulag. I'm just saying, like, he can't do both of these things at the level that he wants to do both of these things. And he has to choose, or the NFL has to choose for him. But take Antonio Pierce's words with a grain of salt because he was fired by that franchise. Don't need it to make my case, but Antonio Pierce was weighing in on that. That will be it because Thursday night football between the Dolphins and the Bills is right now. Talk to you tomorrow.